好，咁接住落嚟啦，頭先都好多現場嘅參加者問咗好多問題啊，咁就接住落嚟到大家都好中意，即係好中意好多問題問啦，我哋咁就去到 Q&A section 啦。好，咁首先咧第一條問題就有人問，到底一手同二手買賣喺法律程序上面有啲咩分別嘅咧
？All right, so Andrew and Sarah, we've taken some questions from the floor, from the Q&A. The first question here for you is, what are the main differences between the legal processes for new build property versus a secondary market property? Can you please enlighten us?
Do you want me to take this one, or Andrew, would you rather?
Sure, no problem.
So happy for you too.
Thank you. Okay, so with regards to standard residential property, obviously it's been standing for a while. When you review the documentation, there's a wide scope of things that could come up during this review. When you're looking at new build property, you're looking at the development's already prepared pack. So you look at a detailed development pack, which should have all the documentation that you need already. So in effect, when we look at it, we've already been given a lot of the information, whereas when you look at residential, a lot of the time you haven't been given a full picture. So you need to do quite a thorough investigation. Additionally, with new build, we tend to move to exchange quite quickly. Whereas with residential, if there's, for instance, a chain or if there's any issues that arise, that can cause delay. Also with new build, everything is signed off by building control at the end, and they're also signed off by a warranty. The warranty is a full structural warranty and it lasts for 10 years. So you have that guarantee for 10 years. Obviously, with residential property, you don't have an ongoing guarantee for 10 years.
Right, okay. Thank you for highlighting the differences, Sarah. Max, 如果你唔介意，可唔可以幫我哋再詮釋翻頭先 Sarah 嘅回應，關於一手同二手買賣嘅分別？
好，咁有關於二手咧，其實都有好多時候都同一手都幾大分別下嘅。就譬如話二手物業嘅話，有時候係有一個叫 chain 嘅transaction 嘅。咁chain 嘅呢個鎖鏈嘅 transaction 嘅話係比較麻煩啲嘅，咁有可能係要等到6個月先可以交換合同嘅。但係一手嘅房嘅話咧，咁就會比較快啲，同埋有更加多嘅warranty， 更加多嘅保險之類嘅。咁我哋呢個 development 就好似有一個10年嘅保險嘅，從legal completion 開始嘅話。
好，
明白嘅。
咁唔該晒。咁另外仲有第2條問題啦。咁就有位現場觀眾問啦，佢本身係 first time buyer 買咗間屋嘅，咁諗住自己住。咁如果佢之後轉為出租，會唔會有時間限制，或者話有冇話佢幾多年內唔能夠出租㗎？有冇咁嘅限制㗎
？Okay, so thank you, Jenny. And Andrew and Sarah, here we have a second question from the floor. This time is regarding the stamp duty legal aspect of the property transaction. So the question is, are there any restrictions in terms of when a purchaser can switch the purpose of a property from end use, buy to live, to that of investment, buy to let? Let's say they started off as a first-time buyer, buying property for end use. Are there any restrictions in terms of the time frame within which they can or cannot do this, make the switch? Thank you.
There are no strict time frames as to when they can switch from a buy to let or a buy to live or vice versa. If the issue is one of stamp duty, land tax, and residency status, it probably has more effect and relevance there. That's something which is determined upon the status of the buyer as at the date of completion. So what is the situation at the date of completion? That will determine the stamp duty, land tax they will pay.
Yes.
OK， 明白啦。咁簡單啲啦 ，Andrew 嘅意思就係話，其實就算你係買咗個物業，其實係好睇你喺完成交易當下嗰一刻，如果你係自己住嘅話，你俾完個 stamp duty 啦。咁假如可能你半年後或者1年後你想轉樓變成出租物業嘅話咧，係冇影響嘅，係計你完成交易嗰一刻，到底你係諗住我嚟自住啊，定係我嚟出租嘅啫？係啦。好，咁另外都有一條問題嘅，就係想知道，如果係生效嘅 leasehold 法律內容有冇啲咩影響？聽講好似話7月份有啲嘅關於 leasehold 嘅法律會有啲更改。
Okay, so Andrew and Sarah, we have an open-ended question here from the floor in relation to the upcoming changes legislation regarding leasehold. So what are your comments, what are your views in terms of the legal implications, especially considering many of the apartments in the UK new build are leasehold? What do you have anything to share in terms of the potential changes?
Regarding the ground rent, which I think is what we're referring to here. Yeah, perfect. Yes, at the moment, most developers know that legislation is moving towards that way anyway. So a vast majority of the developers are making their leases fairly compliant with that legislation. So they're making it so that there aren't issues in the future with buying and selling, and so that lenders will approve the terms within the leases, because the last thing they want is for the legislation to come into place and for their development to have an issue due to ground rent they've previously charged.
I think at the moment, what we're seeing is that there's a real mixture of approach by developers. Some developers will charge a ground rent in their leases now, others don't. So there's no hard and fast rule. It just depends on the developer and the form of the lease, and it's our job to point that out to you before you complete your purchase, so you understand what your potential liabilities are.
I see, Andrew. That's thank you for the insight. So basically, there are two approaches, hard and fast. Some do it in anticipation of the change, whereas others might wish to completely forego that. 所以咧，基本上咧 ，Andrew 同埋 Sarah 啱啱同我哋分享嘅，即係關於呢個嚟緊 leasehold 有機會會改變嘅一啲法律咧，就係話發展商有2個 approach 嘅。第一個咧就係佢哋可能。佢哋計 ground rent 啦，地租嘅方式就係佢哋有預測嚟緊個轉變咧，會點樣影響佢哋咧？咁佢哋都會跟翻佢哋 expect 嘅 change 咧，去計翻，即係去策劃點樣去計翻個地租嘅數據嘅。咁另外都有啲發展商可能佢就未必話完全咁介意呢啲 changes， 甚至乎佢係冇收任何 ground rent 添，所以各有各嘅呢個方式去應對呢個話題啦。
好，咁跟住啦。好，有現場觀眾問啊，喺英國買物業咧，係揾 solicitor 定係揾 licensed conveyancer 咧？兩者有冇咩分別㗎
？Okay, so question here, for you, Andrew or Sarah, what are there any differences in terms of someone referred to as a solicitor versus someone referred to as a licensed conveyancer in terms of representing a buyer for a UK property purchase? Are they both applicable, or what would you say are the differences? Thank you.
There are quite a number of differences. A solicitor is qualified to practice in a number of areas of law. A licensed conveyancer isn't. They tend to focus purely on conveyancing, but fundamentally there may be regulatory differences between the two types of practitioners and the obligations to have professional indemnity insurance. So for example, Child and Child carry professional indemnity insurance for over £30 million. So our professional advice is insured, and that may not be the case of other practitioners, such as a licensed conveyancer, they may have different obligations for insurance. We are regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which means that solicitors have to comply with a very strict rules of conduct, so that we behave in a proper professional way, acting with integrity to ensure that the purchasing client is protected at all times. So there are differences in terms of regulation, possibly insurance as well.
I see. Thank you so much for the insight in terms of differences. 咁 Andrew 啱啱就解釋咗，原來其實 solicitor 同 licensed conveyancer 嘅分別都幾大嘅。咁 solicitor 其實係可以代表買家嘅呢個法律範圍咧，係再廣闊啲嘅。Whereas 咧 licensed conveyancer 其實佢哋包括嘅呢個範疇咧，就未必係咁多嘅。咁正如阿 Andrew 就舉個例子，佢哋 Child 啦、律師樓咧，其實公司咧有個insurance 咧係保障嘅佢哋嘅 professional advice 嘅，咁佢哋身為律師代表買家咧，咁任何一啲事情發生咧，咁佢哋嘅 insurance 都可以賠償 up to 咧講緊3000萬嘅英鎊咯喎，係啦，所以其實佢哋係其實受更加多嘅呢個專業嘅團體嘅呢個管制嘅一個律師樓嘅，咁佢哋就係某程度上佢係會比起 licensed conveyancer 咧係可以更加有資深嘅呢個 insight 咧，去代表我哋嘅買家嘅，所以大家都可以留意翻咯，真係有分別嘅。
好，咁因為現場都好多問題，因為時間關係咧，我哋問最後一條問題啦。咁最後一條問題 ，Here is the last questions。好，咁有現場觀眾問啊。Developer 係咪必須要提供 EWS1 form 咧？如果solicitor 會唔會幫佢哋 check 下呢個物業有冇 EWS1？ 同埋如果個 developer 唔可以 provide 嘅話，係有冇問題嘅咧？
Okay, so Andrew and Sarah, so this is the final question for the Q&A. This is in relation to what we call the EWS1 form. I think this is the cladding regulations that came into practice recent 2-3 years or more. Okay, so from the legal perspective, is a developer obliged to provide for new builds an EWS1 form? And as a solicitor, will you check the form provided to see if it is legitimate? And if it turns out to be fraudulent, are there any channels to file a complaint to avoid financial loss in relation to cladding legislations? Thank you.
So with regards to the EWS1, if the development, if an EWS1 is applicable for the development, then yes, we would ask for it and we would check it. The developer is obliged to provide such a form upon completion, if not before that. So that's absolutely fine. With regards to the form, we check it. And if it were to be fraudulent and there was loss of funds through that, then the route you would take is you would sue the developer. So you would take them to court, especially for fraud.
And that's right. And generally speaking, any buildings over 5 or more stories is likely to require an external wall survey.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew and Sarah. 咁意思即係話咧，喺咁樣嘅情況之下啦，發展商係有呢個責任提供翻所謂嘅 EWS1 嘅表格嘅，呢個係關於個消防條例嘅 cladding issue 啦。咁 Sarah 同埋 Andrew 啱啱透露咗啦，如果即係以防萬一啦，呢個發展商提供嘅表格係有問題嘅。即係唔係正規嘅，咁下一個步驟咧就係買家要出信啦，去告個發展商啦。係啦。
好，咁今日嘅時間都差唔多啦，我哋仲 overrun 咗少少時間。咁今日都非常之唔該晒 Andrew、Sarah 同埋阿 Max 同埋咁多位現場嘅參加者嘅。
Yeah, we thank you so much, Andrew, Sarah, and Max, for joining us today for the webinar. It's been very insightful to hear your responses in relation to the various scenarios and the Q&As that our audience have put forward. I think we look forward to long-term, even more collaboration with you as we put you in touch with more of our buyers in regards to the legal aspects. Thank you again so much. 咁大家唔該晒啦，今日抽空出席我哋嘅講座啦。咁如果有咩問題咧，歡迎喺會後邊咧個別同我哋嘅同事聯絡，分別係我啦、Jenny、Jackie 同埋 Simon 都可以揾到我哋嘅。係啦，咁大家多謝晒大家今日嘅時間啦，今日就到此為止，唔該晒，拜拜。